Welcome to this latest video game lore video. I'm Zoe delahunty-light and I'm tired. Because, wow, this one was tricky. That's because it's all about the Duke from Resident Evil Village. Being enigmatic is kind of his thing, so finding out any solid information about our jolly merchant was a stretch, but don't you fear. Despite the mystery surrounding the Duke, I've dug up some new stuff about his background, business, and the most compelling theories on who, or what on earth he is. Here's the Duke from Resident Evil Village's story explained, and beware, there are endgame spoilers within. The Duke is one of the very few friendly faces you meet in Resident Evil Village, yet he was quite the charmer even before encountering Ethan. He's been doing business in the village for years, whether that's with the Four Lords themselves, conversing with Mother Miranda, or even doing favours for the locals, which I think tells you a lot about his ulterior motive, which I will get onto in just a bit. Lady Dimitrescu and the Duke's relationship goes so far back and is of such a pedigree that the Duke even has a room of his very own in Castle Dimitrescu. More of an indication that he was a valuable asset for Dimitrescu is that he remained unmauled and full of blood, despite her 3 exceptionally carnivorous daughters being in the vicinity. I've seen in the Wikipedia fandom entry for the Duke that it says he hangs up garlic to deter these vampiric witches, but I'm going to call BS on that, as there's no evidence that garlic stops Lady D or her daughters. If anything, the Duke is more vulnerable than ever in Castle Dimitrescu. He has no means of quick escape that we know of, but again, more on the Duke and his movements later. And he has no windows in his room of wares. No windows means nothing to deter the daughters from coming inside and using those scythes on him, as the cold air from outside makes Lady D's daughters vulnerable to, death. Lady D has such a good working relationship with the Duke that his visits are mentioned in her guest book, outlining that the pair had business discussions. And here we get to one of the core characteristics of the Duke. For him, coin is king. In his own words, if there's money to be made, you can bet on finding him close by. Morality doesn't enter into his business dealings, as he supplies goods to Lady D and presumably the other lords as well as Miranda. I actually think he's the middleman between the Dimitrescu vineyard and the wider world, selling the Sanguine, Virginis and other bottles to anonymous wine aficionados across the globe. Any good merchant knows about supply and demand, so it should come as no surprise that the Duke bent and sometimes outright ignored Mother Miranda's rules to make a bit of extra on the side when it came to the villagers, or even just help them out for free. Ernest, one of those villagers, mentions in his diary that he's given, not sold, given, old newspapers by the jolly merchant. Unsurprisingly, Miranda forbids news of the outside world in her little religion/cult area, but that doesn't stop the Duke. Bequeathing newspapers to Ernest for free is a curious thing to do. Why not make some money off of his curiosity? Could it be that the Duke wants to gradually break Miranda's hold over the villagers by exposing them to the wider world? I think that might be the case. Despite his underhand dealings, the Duke benefits from Miranda's protection in the village. He's never attacked by lichens, even though he's helping Ethan, and is left to do his business without much interference from anyone. It's entirely possible that he's the only contact with the outside world that the village has, and with the village being that isolated, he's probably the only person that was ever able to even make it there by carriage, could be trusted, and didn't get scared off by the locals' odd religion. Concept art notes state that the Duke was going to be the 5th Lord, which doesn't really come as a surprise considering his curious habits. Come on, you must have noticed it too. Somehow, he's always where he needs to be. By the altar, in the factory, in Castle Dimitrescu, in the fishing village. It's seemingly no problem for the Duke to pack up shop and be ready and waiting for Ethan no matter where he is. The only exception is the Beneviento mansion. That's the one place in the entire game that the Duke does not set up shop. I think that's because he knows if he gets close to there while Donna's alive, she'll probably try to make him hallucinate things using her pheromone-controlled pollen. here we have the second indication, along with his willingness to trade with the village, that there's more to the Duke than meets the eye. No one can move that quickly. How does he always appear ready to trade, no matter how inaccessible or dangerous the location? The Duke is not human. When Ethan asks him what he is, even he doesn't quite know, saying,
"Even I can't quite answer that."
So, let's try to figure out what the Duke is, shall we? The most solid bit of evidence about the Duke's lineage comes from his crest, which you can see when he's carrying Ethan to his final encounter with Miranda. It's an owl and horses astride the phrase, "L'argent défend le droit." Excuse my horrendous pronunciation. Heraldry sites list the owl as being a symbol of prudence and wisdom, which is our Duke to a T. He's smart enough not to invoke the ire of Miranda or the Four Lords, is cautious when it comes to his business dealings to make sure that he remains an ally to the village, yet is wise enough to know that providing some newspapers to the villagers could give them a bit of freedom, and knows that supporting Ethan in his endeavours is the right thing to do. L'argent défend le droit roughly translates into money defends the law. I reckon this means that the Duke's mercantile habits and ability to make coin kind of keep him safe, as he's an amoral businessman as far as the lords think. His business allows him to discreetly influence the law of the village, i.e. allowing outsiders in and covertly giving news of the outside world to the villagers, and provides him with an element of shielding from the normally homicidal rulers. Let's also not forget that the Duke knows the merchant from Resident Evil 4. This is a big stretch, but hear me out. The Duke may know him because they're both part of some kind of global trading syndicate. Right near the end of the game, the Duke does say,
"Because of all this commotion, I've lost an entire territory to transact in."
Indicating that he trades in other places, the village just being one of his territories. So, he's much more than just a merchant for Miranda and the Four Lords. I mean, isn't it weird that there's almost always someone willing to sell you guns and ammo in the Resi games? What if all of these merchants are part of the same organisation that acts as a sort of black market that operates solely in these high-risk areas, selling items at a premium to both sides? Or the Duke could just know the merchant from Resi 4 as a little Easter egg, which is probably more likely, to be honest. Back to what we can know for sure about the Duke, though. Look closely at his shop and you can make out what the Duke's Emporium is all about. Information on anyone, anywhere, anytime. Connoisseur of exotic food and drink. We purchase oddities and valuables for a fair price. The last two mottos are self-explanatory, but the first one is intriguing. The Duke, it appears, trades information as well as goods, and appears to boast of having an omniscient knowledge of a remarkable amount of things. This links to his omnipresent nature, and I'll get onto both of them in just a minute. Then, here in calligraphy, it reads the Right Honourable Lady Caroline Margaret Devine, which I think is either the Duke's patron, who finances him and tells him where to trade and is of substantial means judging by the aristocratic English way she's referred to, or it's the name of his cart. This is all guesswork, as the Duke remains as enigmatic as ever when it comes to his past, so we have no real way of knowing who or what the Right Honourable Lady Caroline Margaret Devine is, or was. Okay, here's my theory about what the Duke is, and it's a common one on the internet because it is pretty compelling. I think the Duke is part of the Megamycete. Whether that's because he was experimented upon by Miranda or because he's actually made of Megamycete is up for debate, but either way, he's tapped into it in a way potentially even beyond Miranda's ability, using it to travel to and from places in the village and manifesting himself wherever he's needed. Think about it. His shop doesn't hide the fact that no one is a stranger to the Emporium. Right from your first encounter with him, he's pretty stoked to meet Ethan.
Anyone who is anyone has heard of the likes of you.
Either he's heard gossip from the Four Lords, or, being part of the Megamycete, he knows already that something new has entered his domain. Plus, he knows all about Miranda's plans, though, again, I will admit this could be because he's deeply enmeshed in the village's activities, and could have heard about it from the Lords or Miranda herself. he does take great pleasure in teasing his miraculous ability to obtain things. He's stocking wine after defeating Domitresque, holding one of Donna's dolls after you defeat Donna, looking at the jar of cadeaux from Moreau's shack after you defeat Moreau, and then he has Moreau's cheese in Heisenberg's factory. He could have only got those things by going to their locations, but you never saw or heard him. But if he's part of the Megamycete or can travel through it, he can slip into those places easily. Massacred villagers, ravenous lichens, giant man-faced wolf things. There is nothing that phases the Duke. Try to shoot him and he just chides you for wasting your ammo. Clearly, he's not worried about his safety despite the chaos surrounding him. If he's made of Megamycete or has been granted the ability to travel through it, what has he got to be scared of? He can reform himself elsewhere if he's harmed, or might have a wildly powerful regenerative ability like Domitresque that renders all attacks practically useless against him. Just because the Duke is part of the Megamycete doesn't mean he's okay with what Miranda's up to, and I think his helping Ethan goes beyond just trying to make some extra cash on the side. With him also delivering newspapers to the villagers, I think the Duke wants to expose Miranda to the outside world, or at least stop her plan because he knows she's too powerful. Why else would he deliver Ethan right to her doorstep? Perhaps if he was another victim of Miranda's experiments and that's how he bonded with the Megamycete, he wants his final bit of revenge just like Heisenberg. But I don't get that vindictive vibe from him. I think he just knows, pure and simple, that Miranda is evil, and she's already hurt a lot of people and needs to be stopped. Some people think that the Duke could literally be the Megamycete itself, as it's become sentient and manifested itself in the form of the Duke, but I think the Miranda experimenting theory is more realistic. Or as realistic as anything related to Resident Evil can be. Or the other theory about the Duke is that he's just a convenient plot point that gets you from A to B at the end of the game and sells your stuff. So, there you go. That's the Duke from Resident Evil Village's Story Explained. Who or what do you think the Duke is? Could he be part of the Megamycete? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, thanks very much, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Eurogamer as we have a new video out every single day. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go, so remember to stay hydrated, folks, and I'll see you next time.